Jack, during this time, you're also working. You said you started out at Modern Ice from 1950
To
to
65.
1965, and then that's where you had you began your union involvement.
An awful lot.
Why don't you tell me a little bit? Excuse me. I was going to say, will you tell us a little bit about your work years? You know, you started with Modern Ice and all the way down to the 70s.
Modern Ice was a union company under AFL 287, Local 287 of the Teamsters Union. And in 1951, we were making, when I started there in 50, I was making $2.17 an hour. And that was good compared to most of the other jobs that were packing house or canneries that were under $1 in many places. In 1952, I put together the people that I work with, the employees there at Modern Ice. So many of them are in heaven now. It was Johnny Lira, Manuel Zavala, Hermilo Peña, H-E-R, Hermilo, H-E-R, and gathered a few other Teamsters from other jobs, and I got together and gave them the information that we would use for the improvement that we needed, given that Teamsters Union was a very powerful union under Jimmy Hoffa. And they had a tremendous amount of clout. I sat down with them and we planned the approach that we would take, given a union meeting, which was once a month. I would tell them what the presentation was going to be like, what I would do when I stood up and asked for a time for me to make the presentation. There was 7 members of the board that sat up on high and were good people, but didn't do very much because it's just difficult to try to change it without the power of a mass of people. So that the first time that we went, I had everybody informed. We got as many of the people that were there at the meeting and informed them of what was going to happen, and asked them when the vote was asked for to go ahead and raise their hand. The first presentation I made was for health insurance, and I explained why the health insurance was important, how the union members needed it and their families, and that it should be affordable so that the company could provide it. As soon as I made the presentation, as was planned, one of the people from the back got up and says, "I second that motion." There was a motion made, a second the motion, and then call for the vote. And everybody would raise their hand. Everybody would raise their hand, and we got the health insurance. The next meeting we went to, we did the same kind of approach, same planning, and I asked for increased vacation and an increase in wages. We went from $2.17 an hour to $3.25 in one fell swoop because of the union members all voting for the motion. And then I had the motion for having the companies offer sick leave and an increase in vacation time. We went in vacation time from 1 week a year to 2 weeks a year, and 13 holidays, and personal leave. All of that improved the company to a point where even they had to admit that the work that was being done was much improved. And at the time, that was one of the better places to work at. I left there in 1965 making short of $5 an hour, which at that time, 1965, was pretty good money for workers. This is just warehouse laborers, so you didn't have too much support for any more than that. But when you stop and think, I would take home maybe $700 to $800 a month, and that paid for my $70 mortgage. It paid maybe $15 for PG&E. Paid for the gas for my car, which was about maybe $5 a week. It paid for my groceries, which at the time was $50 a week. So it was we weren't hand to mouth, but we didn't have too much reserves, but all the basics were met. In 1968, one of the Reggie Bravo was his name. He was an agent for 287. And good guy. He came to me and he says there's a store opening up on King and Story Road, and I'm going over there to inform them that we're interested in making sure that they hire people that in the community that they're going to serve. And I want you to go with me. I said, I'm sure. So both of us went over there, and we talked to the person in charge. His name was Whitehouse, Mr. Whitehouse. And we informed him that we wanted to make sure that he hired the minorities in proportion to the percentages that they were in the community that he was serving. And it didn't take too much to convince him. He said, yeah, that's fine. He said, and I made sure that he understood that we needed some Spanish speakers for people that needed service that didn't speak English. He agreed to that too. And so we left feeling like we had accomplished something. And it was maybe a week later, I got a call from Mr. Whitehouse.
What was the name of the store?
Bazaar. Bazaar had a department store with a jewelry department, a clothing department, an automotive department. They had a pharmacy. It was a very, very good store. And then next to it, attached to the same building, was Bazaar Grocery Store, also a good store. He called me up and he says, can you come by to see me? I said, sure. He gave me a time and a place right there at the store. And that was in December of 1967. So I assumed that it was a follow-up to the meeting that we had when we went down there and made our presentation. And so when I got there, we went to a little snack bar that was inside the store and got some coffee. And he says, I want to talk to you about maybe coming to work for me as the head man in the warehouse. And I says, yes, I'd be glad to, with one condition. He said, what's that? I said, it's going to be a 3-man operation. I hire the 2 men that are going to work with me, and it has to be union. And he says, well, for 3 people, yeah. Everything else in the stores was retail union, which are much lower pay. And at the time, at Bazaar, I started off at, I think it was $6.10 or something. I went up real quick because I went all the way up to about maybe $8.50. And I brought my compadre Max Rodriguez with me, who had worked with me at Modern Ice. And I brought Manny Silva, who had worked with me at LA Drug. Both of them excellent workers. And so we took over the warehouse, the 3 of us, and shipping, receiving, mostly receiving because we got a lot of stuff for the store, and made sure that it went to the right department. I had a payphone right close to my stand-up desk there at the door, and that's how I continued to do business with outside, whether it was talk to the San Jose Mercury, talk to council member, discuss something with a supervisor. At the time, Ray, I had good relationships with San Jose Police Chief, with Chief Geary from the Sheriff's Department, with Louis Bergna, who was a DA, all 5 members of the Board of Supervisors. Norman Mineta was at the time mayor, and I had a first name basis with every council member. There were 7 at the time. So it was easy to conduct some of the business over the phone, even if it was just to set up a meeting to discuss one matter or another. We were pretty active. I think there was more activity between 1966 and I would say we went strong till maybe 90, 92. And then, you know, people have lives, they go their own way, and there wasn't too much happening after so much of the things that the group was able to fix or repair. I worked for Moxa from 1972 till 1980. And that's when we did an awful lot of the work for making sure that Chicanos were hired in the Sheriff's Department. We had 2% at the time. At the present time now it's 28%. And that took that meeting that we had with Sig Sanchez and Dominic Cortese. The session that we had with Joe McNamara for making sure that Chicanos were hired in the police department was much easier. We didn't talk maybe half an hour, and he had already had a plan of agreement on how he was going to proceed to make sure that that happened. we had less than 2% Chicanos in the police department, most of them bad. And now we're up at around 30% and a lot of good cops. No panacea, because a cop's a cop, but when you get somebody that can go on the east side, instead of beating up a kid who's got a beer, this guy takes the beer, spills it on the gutter, tells the kid, no more beer, go home, and if I catch you out here again, you're going to be in trouble. The white cop generally would wind up roughing them up, sitting them on the curb, abusing them, humiliating them, and taking them to juvenile hall. Big difference. All of that was done with community effort, and most of that was done by Maxa and the group that we had together at the time.
When you said the police department had about 2% Chicanos and they weren't very good, tell me about police, the few Chicano police we had at the time.
Bad.
Why?
I guess they had to emulate the white cop to make sure that, hey, you know, we're one of you guys. And the few that we had on there were brutal, you know, beaters and stuff. You know how much they improved after that is what is amazing, in that as we got new cops, Chicano cops, you saw the difference in the few that were bad come to the other side where they belonged, and they improved. With the exception of maybe a couple, there was a deputy chief